Guys, so we're going through the self-therapy workbook for internal family systems. We are in chapter 14, accessing and witnessing childhood origins. Once you've gotten to know an exile and developed some trust with it, you can access the childhood origins of its pain. And in IFS, the memories, intense feelings, somatic experiences, beliefs, and confusions that exiles hold are referred to as burdens. They are what the exile has experienced or taken on. The burdens are not intrinsic to the exile, which is why they can be released. From the IFS perspective, the exile itself wasn't created by painful experiences. The burdens were. Witnessing the exile story. As mentioned earlier, exiles primarily want to be heard. For the most part, we can assume that they didn't have someone present during the childhood situation to accurately mirror their feelings, adequately protect them, offer solace, or comfort, or put into perspective what they were experiencing. A major role of self is to provide this witnessing function. Sometimes when an exile shows up, you spontaneously know the story it holds. The exile comes as a child with a memory from your past. You see and remember the situation, and you know what happened and the burden that the exile holds. So here's a little image. Other times, as you meet and begin to gain the trust of an exile, you may have to ask it to show you the origins of its burdens. The following are a few good prompts to encourage an exile to tell you its story. Please show me an image or a memory of when you learned to feel this way. Please show me a time when you first took on this role in childhood. What do you want me to know about you that would help me understand you better? Images and memories. Memories can come in many forms. They can be visual stories like watching a movie of the event, or they can be physical cues that remind you of an earlier time. They can be body memories such as pain, tension, sounds, or smells that eventually lead to more information. They can be emotional feelings that flow through you with or without actual content. It is not important that the part of a conscious memory of a specific incident. It is important that you consciously stay with the part in self as the memory sequence unfolds. Memories may not be clear or sequential for these reasons. The memory might be preverbal because it happened when you were too young to have conscious memory or an understanding of what was taking place. This is called implicit memory. It comes in the form of a body or emotional sensing or an image that doesn't correspond to any conscious memory or story about yourself that you're aware of. The memory might not be one incident, but rather a particular family interaction that happened hundreds or thousands of times. In this case, there might be one conscious memory that represents all of these, or there might be an image or other less clear sensing that represents them all. The memory might not be available in conscious form, but it will show up as an image or other form of implicit memory, such as body sensations. Once the exile shows you an image or memory, ask it to fill in the details as much as it wants to. But especially interested in what happened. Be especially interested in what happened and how this made the part feel. You are there as a compassionate, caring witness. It is fine if the part shows you a series of memories that are all related to one feeling or issue. However, when you move on to the next steps, it is best to focus on one of these memories at a time. Before you move on to the next steps, make sure the part has shown you everything it wants to and that it feels that you understand how bad the experience was. Exercise. Accessing and witnessing a childhood memory. This exercise involves working with a childhood memory. You'll be spending some time with an exile, witnessing its story and finding out the impact of these events on it. You can either continue the work that you have been doing with the exile you were previously getting to know, or begin a new piece of work. If you choose to explore a new exile, begin with the protector and go through steps part 1 through 5 until you have made contact with and developed a safe relationship with the exile. Wherever you choose to start, begin by taking a few moments to activate self and energy. You might have a habitual way to do this, or you might take a few deep breaths. Relax your shoulders, wiggle your jaw, and sink deeply into your body. With another deep breath, let your protectors know that you in self are here and are interested in hearing this exile story. So you'd list the name of the exile. As you got to know the exile, did it come with a clear memory? Did you need to ask it to reveal its childhood story? If so, what questions were helpful? Were you aware of other protectors coming in to protect the exile during the witnessing process? If so, who showed up? What were the exile's feelings and beliefs? What happened in childhood? How did that make the exile feel? How do you in self feel toward the exile now? Does the exile feel that you understand how bad it was? Use the journal space below for other notes on the witnessing process. Sample: accessing and witnessing a childhood memory. Name of exile: the good girl. As you got to know the exile, did it come with a clear memory? Yes. Did you need to ask it to reveal its childhood story? No. When I appreciated the protector, the story just came into my consciousness. I remembered what it was like before the protector was there when other kids made fun of me. If so, what questions were helpful? Can you appreciate how the protector feels that her job is necessary? Were you aware of the other protectors coming in to protect the child during the witnessing process? Yes. If so, who showed up? The inner critic showed up in the form of a nun. Exile's feelings and beliefs: I'm weird and strange and something is wrong with me. What happened in childhood? The nun told me that something was wrong with me and that's why I didn't have friends. How did that make the exile feel? Lonely, weird, and rejected. How do you and self feel toward the exile now? Compassionate and caring. Does the exile feel that you understand how bad it was? Yes, it can feel me here, caring for it. It relaxes and it can sit still. All right, so we're in step 5, chapter 15, reparenting an exile. Once you have accessed and witnessed the childhood origins of an exile's pain, you can reparent the exile. This means you provide healing to the exile by supplying caring, relatedness, and support that the exile needed at the time of the original wounding. The self can provide the exile with a new positive experience to replace the original painful one. The reparenting process actually lays down new neural pathways in the brain. This is why your psyche and your life can change so dramatically. During the witnessing step, the exile showed you a memory in which it took on the pain and negative beliefs, burdens. You will focus on this memory for the reparenting step. If the exile showed you a number of related memories, you can choose one of these to focus on. So I'm just going to show you the picture now. Reparenting process. In your imagination, join the exile in that original childhood situation. For example, if the memory involves being ridiculed by your mother for the way you are helping her in the kitchen, imagine yourself in that kitchen with the exile and your mother. Make sure you enter the situation as the self with all your adult knowledge and capacities, enhanced by the qualities of the self, such as compassion, courage, and calmness. Be with the exile in the way it needed someone to be with it at that time. It may need understanding, caring, support, approval, protection from harm, encouragement, or love. Sense what is needed from you for healing in that situation and redress what happened. When you understand what the exile needs from you, provide it through your internal imagination. This may include visual images, body sensing, emotional contact, and talking to the exile. From self, you have the capacity to reparent the exile to be the good parent that it needs. This is very satisfying for the exile and is also rewarding for you because it feels wonderful to provide comfort and safety to a part of you that desperately needs it. It also deepens the bond between you and the exile. Sometimes the exile wants you to take action in that scene and do something for it or be its advocate. For example, it may want you to talk to its parent about a way it was treated or something it needed. Sometimes an exile wants support to speak for itself. It may want you to stand next to it or behind it as it communicates what it needed. Don't try to make the exile change in any way. You don't want it to feel pressure to change who it is or to think or feel differently about itself. These kinds of changes will result naturally from the reparenting experience and from the next step, which is unburdening. Keep your focus on what you can do right now. At first, it might be easier to focus on what the exile can get from you rather than from other people in the childhood situation. Confronting or changing the original situation is possible and is often quite helpful, but it is usually easier for the exile to receive support from you. If the exile wants things from you in the future over the next few weeks, for example, you may want to promise to give it what it wants. It is important to follow through on what you commit to, so do it carefully. However, be sure to see if there is anything the exile needs from you right now. Exercise. Reparenting an exile. Now we are going to move on to reparenting the exile. As before, you may want to continue to work with that exile you were in a previous exercise, or you may want to explore a new exile. If the latter is true, make sure to work through all the previous steps so that your protectors know who you are. You are here with the best intentions and your highest capacities of compassion and caring for the exile. Wherever you choose to start, take a few moments and ground your self-energy. Take a deep breath and then imagine bringing your breath in through the top of your head and blowing it out through your toes. Imagine letting the air be like the waves of the ocean, moving through you, calming and relaxing you. This flow of air can wash away anything that keeps you from being fully in self. Once you have accessed and witnessed the childhood origins of an exile's pain, ask if it would like you to enter the childhood scene or time and help it. If the exile is willing, imagine yourself going back in time and being there with the child of the past. Let the exile tell you what it wants to happen and what it wants from you. As you give the exile what it needs, check to see if it can sense you. Then check to see how it is responding to what you are giving. Is it taking it in? Take time to feel the experience of giving, the love, support, compassion, and so on. How does it feel in your body to be present with the exile in this way? Then take time for the exile to bask in the good feeling that results and to feel the effects in its body. So you list the exile, what happened in childhood, how that made the exile feel, the form of reparenting you gave the exile, anything the exile wanted you to provide it with directly, whether the exile wanted you to advocate for it in a situation, whether the exile wanted you to support it in advocating for itself, how the exile responded to your reparenting efforts, how others responded to your reparenting efforts. Use the journal space below to take specific notes on this process. Okay, sample, reparenting and exile. Exile, the good girl. What happened in childhood? 2 little girls ran past her house to avoid her because they didn't want to walk to school with her. How that made the exile feel? Lonely, sad, like she was different or strange. The form of reparenting you gave the exile. Self entered the scene. Anything the exile wanted you to provide it with directly? Yes. She wanted self to be her friend. Whether the exile wanted you to advocate for it in the situation? No. She said, if I had you as a friend, I wouldn't need those other girls. Whether the exile wanted you to support it in advocating for itself? She wanted support in sticking her tongue out at the other girls and saying, see, now I have a friend. How the exile responded to your reparenting efforts? She relaxed, became playful, and had fun. How others responded to your parenting efforts? They became unimportant. Exercise. Reparenting an exile in real time. This exercise can be used to do follow-up work with an exile that you have already reparented and or retrieved. Choose an exile that you know well and have already given reparenting to. Name the exile, original childhood situation, how you reparented the exile, any promises you made to the exile. You can set an intention to reparent this exile in real time over the next week. In order to be aware of when the exile is likely to be triggered, answer the following questions. What kinds of situations or people tend to activate this exile? When are these likely to occur during the next week? Find a way to remind yourself to be aware of whether this part becomes activated at these times. When you notice that the exile has been triggered, take a moment to tune into it and find out what it is feeling and what it needs. Most likely, it will need the same form of reparenting that you have already given it during your time with it. This makes it easy to do because you already know what it needs. Give the exile the reparenting it needs in the moment. Make notes below as necessary about your experience. The exile, name and place of trigger, trigger situation, awareness triggers, feelings, body sensations, memories, thoughts, emotions, protectors arising, other responses. Reparenting intervention, how the exile responded. Anything else the exile needs from you. All right, guys, that's it for today. Have a good one.